Join me as we learn Chumash for Shabbos, Parshas Acharei Mos-Kedoshim. This is the Torah reading of Acharei Mos-Kedoshim when read combined, chapter 20, verse 8. We spoke about the previous Torah readings about the forbidden relationships and many different mitzvahs that one is not allowed to do, abrogations of the mitzvahs, I should say. And today we continue with the punishments for the forbidden relationships. As we mentioned, as we're going to see, as well as Rashi is going to explain to us, that every one of these relationships, though many of them were already mentioned about that it's forbidden in the previous Torah reading, but still in all the Torah reminds us again about it, because this time it comes with a punishment. Every time the Torah tells us about a punishment concerning any of the abrogations, it comes first with a warning. So there's a warning. One time it tells us about the actual abrogation and its negative commandment, and then the next time it tells us with the punishment as well, as we should see in the following verses. Verse 8. Ushmartem eschukaisai. You must safeguard my rules, and you will do them, you'll fulfill them. Ani Hashem ekadishchem, I am God who sanctified you. Verse 9, Ki ish asher yekalelos aviv, for any person who were to curse his father, ves imay, or his mother, mois yumos, shall be put to death. Aviv imay kilel, because he cursed his father or mother, dam of boy, his blood is his own fault, he is liable for his own death. Rashi, aviv imay kilel, l'rabbi slachar misa, this includes even after their passing. Though we mentioned previously when a person curses somebody, that was only while they're alive. However, a person's parents, he is obligated to respect them while they're alive and as well after their passing. Dam of boy, what is the blood? What punishment does he get? Skila, the skila, that means he is stoned. V'chein kol makim shenemer d'meim bam. Anytime it says their blood is their own fault, then it would be the punishment of skila. Where do we know this from? We learned this by the Ovi Yedoni, where it says that their blood is their own fault, and the punishment there is stoning. It's not that he's being punished, so to speak, on the things that he did wrong, on his abrogation. It is his own fault that caused his death. Verse 10, and a man who commits a Jewish man who commits adultery with another person's wife, with the wife of his fellow, or the adulterer, or he commits adultery with the wife of his fellow Jew, the wife of a fellow Jew, mois yumas, they are put to death. Who's put to death? Hanayef, the adulterer and the adulteress. Each one of these words teach us about another law. V'ish, why does it say a man? Prat l'katan. This excludes a child. Asher yina fashes prat leishes katan. This excludes the wife of a child. Lemadnu, from here we learn, she'ein lekatan kedushin, that when a child made consecrate a marriage, it's not considered valid. Because on which type of married woman did I make you liable for? When it says your one's fellow means a Jewish person, which excludes if the person was married to a non-Jew. Lamadnu, from here we learn, that the marriage is not considered a marriage, is not valid when one is married to a non-Jew. Therefore, it's not considered adultery if she was married to a non-Jew. Any time that it says liable of capital punishment in the Torah, stam, which not explaining and saying which one it is, eina ela chenek, and it only is considered strangulation. Verse 11. A man who lies with his father's wife, ervas aviv gila, he has thereby uncovered his father's nakedness. Mois yumsu shneim, they both are liable of capital punishment. They both are put to death. Demeim bam, it is their own fault that they are being killed. Verse 12. So too a man who lies with his daughter-in-law. Moisyum sushneim, they both are liable of death penalty. Tevel asu, they did a despicable act. The meim bam, they're liable for their own death. Rashi, tevel asu, the word tevel, genai, means a despicable action. Loshen Acher, another explanation like we explained before, the word tevel comes from the word to be mixed up, because in this case, mebalbalin zera of bezera bein, he is mixing together the seed of the father with the seed of the son, and therefore it is something of disgusting, which is liable of capital punishment. Verse 13, so to a man who lies with a male, the same way one were to be with a woman, they committed abomination. Shneim, both of them, moisyu masu, they're put to death. The meim bum, their blood is their own fault. Rashi, mishkevei isha, what does it mean to be like a woman? The commentaries explain that the rabbis give in the Talmud the example, machnis kibchil b'shifei feres. When people used to paint their eyes, they would take if you want to call it like a Q-tip or a stick, and they would then stick it into a bowl or a little vase that had in it, a tube, I should say, that had in it the makeup, and then they would take the paint and put it on their eyes. So that's what it refers to, the marital relations. Verse 14. And a man who takes a woman and her mother, and he has relations with both of them, zimohi, this is considered bad counsel from the evil inclination, and therefore an abomination. Be'esh yisrufu esay, with fire they should be burnt. Ve'esen, in both of them. V'loisia zima b'seichechem, and thereby there should be no such type of counsel in your midst, such type of behavior, immorality amongst you. Yisrufu esay ve'esen, what does it mean, him and them? Can't be that you should say that he should burn his first wife. Because she was married permissibly, and she was not forbidden for him to marry. So who are the two people that that have to be burned? Ella isha v'ima, the wife and her mother, aksuvim kan, which is mentioned here. Shtei and Be'isra are talking about two women who married him, who had a relationship in a prohibited way. For example, Shanasa, that he married women from 3 generations, or that he was with women with 3 generations. His wife, Eschamoisei, his mother-in-law, V'ima, and the mother of his mother-in-law. So over here you have, he is liable of capital punishment, his mother-in-law and the mother of his mother-in-law. But his wife, she was permissible. However, there are other rabbis that explain this differently. The only one that's put to death here is him and his mother-in-law. Why then does it say eshen in plural, them? Es achas mehen. The word eshen is made up of 3 words. Es achas mehen, him with one of them. Echas. Lashon Yevani yohen echas. In Yevani, in Greek, the word hen can also be one. So it means the one that he was with. Verse 15. So to a man who lies with an animal, he's put to death, and the animal has to be killed. Rashi continues and says, what the animal do wrong that it has to be killed? If the man sinned, what did the animal do wrong? Because this animal caused the man to sin, he was part of the act. Therefore the Torah says, the animal has to be stoned. From here we learn even more so to a human. If an animal that doesn't know what's going on, the Torah says it should be killed. Human that knows how to differentiate between good and bad, and he causes bad to his fellow, to cause him to do something wrong. So too, how much more so we'll be punished? So too we find this in all other places, where, for example, similarly, you should destroy all the places that the non-Jews served idolatry there. Over there we can also learn the same type of law. If a tree that can't see and hear, because they were used for idolatry, the Torah says, destroy, eradicate, and get rid of it. Somebody who seduces or causes his friend to go from the way of life to the way of death, from the way of good to the way of bad, much more so they have to be eradicated. Verse 16. A woman who also approaches an animal in order to fornicate with it. You must kill the woman and the animal. They're both liable of capital punishment. They both must be put to death. The may and bum, it is their own fault. Verse 17, a man who would take his sister, Bas Aviv, and whether it is his father's daughter, Oy Bas Imay, or his mother's daughter, V'ra'a Sarvasa, and he sees her nakedness, V'hisira Esarvasa, and she sees his nakedness, Chesed, who, this is a disgraceful act, V'nichresu, and they will then be cut off, La'inei B'nei Amam, from all the members of their nation, Erves Achoy Segila, because he uncovered his sister's nakedness, and therefore Avina Yisai must bear his sin. What does it mean, chesed? Generally, we know the word chesed means kindness. But in this case, as we know, the chesed here in Aramaic, you can have a word that you say it in the positive, but it really means the opposite effect of it. And therefore, what says chesed, in this case, it means cherpa, it's disgusting, it's an abomination. For that, it's an embarrassment. Chisuda hilana. It is something which is disgusting for her. Midrashe, the Medrash says, and a different interpretation. You may ask, how is it possible that Cain should marry his sister if it's such a terrible thing? Because they were born both with twin sisters, and that's who they married. God did kindness with the people of humanity, to be able to build a society, humanity from them. Shenemer, as it says in Tehillim, Psalm 89, Olam Chesed Yibana, the world was built in kindness, the kindness that God allowed Cain to have a relation with his sister, which brought about the rest of humanity. Verse 18. V'isha shayishkav isisha, and a man who lies with a woman, dava, while she is undergoing a menstrual flow, vigila sarvasa, and he has uncovered her nakedness, es mekoira ha'era, he has uncovered her fountain, v'hi gilsas mekar dameh, and she uncovered the fountain of her blood, v'nichresu shnei mekerev amam, and therefore they will both go off from their people, meaning they'll die prematurely and childless. Rashi, 18, the word he'era, what does that mean? Gila, she revealed. V'chein koloshin erva gilu. So too, whenever we talk about nakedness, means that they revealed something which is usually covered. V'avav yeredus b'tevel l'shem davar, and therefore the vav that comes, part of it erva, and is he'era erva, it comes part of the noun za'ava migzedus v'leikam v'lizav v'chein achva migzedus ach. So too, brotherly, you have the vav in there, comes to the word ach. The actual revealing of the nakedness, what does it mean in this case? Does it mean that they just allowed their private parts to be exposed, or does it also mean that they acted in marital relations? Verse 19. The erves achos imcha, and you must not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, and of your father's sister. Loy sigala, you must not uncover, because they are a very close relative, and therefore by revealing their nakedness, you must bear their sin. Rashi 19, Shana Hakosav Azarasan, the Torah repeats this warning for Loimar to say, that one is over here forewarned that it is not allowed, whether it's a sister from the father or mother from the sister of the father and the mother from the father, or whether it's sisters that only come from the mother. Regardless of how this person may be their sister, they are prohibited to have a relationship with them. However, if the wife of his father's brother, there's only a prohibition pertaining the wife of the father's brother from his father's side. How do we know from the mother's side? That we learn from, this is only a rabbinic inference that we learn from two different words, but not something which is clearly stated in the Torah. Verse 20. A man who lies with his aunt by marriage, he uncovered his uncle's nakedness, and therefore chetam yiso, they then liable for that transgression. Aririm yumusu, they will then die prematurely. 20. Asher yishkav esteidase, Rashi, hamikra zeh balalamid al kodesh amar lamaila shaloi hu be'ina shalichas ariri. This verse is coming to tell me. Didn't we already say about these verses, and these laws were already included in the previous ones? But this verse is coming to tell us that whenever it talks about the punishment of kares, which means that they will die prematurely, it's not only that the person himself would die prematurely, but also meaning that part of the punishment means that their children would die prematurely or they'll die without children. The word aririm, that they will die, aririm, means below vlod, without children. That means they'll die without having children. Because we have that a similar word that Avram tells God, V'anochi heilech ariri, and I am going without children. Yesh banim. What happens if he already has children? Koivram, then they're going to die in an early age. Ein banim. If he doesn't have children, mates banim will die without children. Therefore, the Torah uses the same terminology twice in these two verses. Aririm yamusu, aririm you, that they will die at a young age, or they will be dead at a young age. Meaning, aririm yamusu imyu b'shasavera, they will die young. If he has children, then they'll die prematurely if they were there at the time that he did this terrible act. If not, the punishment lo yulei. If he doesn't have children, kesha yamus lefisha kevrim b'chayiv. He won't have children when he dies because he'll bury them alive, while he is still alive. Aririm you. What does it mean? They will be. So, if he doesn't have children now at the time of the act, the rest of his life will be the same way, that he will not be able to have any children. Verse 21. A man who takes his brother's wife, nidahi, it is a repulsive act. Ervas achiv gila, because he uncovered his brother's nakedness. Aririm yihiyu. They will die prematurely. They will remain without children. Rashi, nidahi, hashkiva azois menudahi ma'usa. Over here, nida doesn't necessarily mean menstrual period, like it sometimes means, but over here it means that this actual act is something which is disgusted and should be banned. The rabbis explain, lesser haraba k'bei nidash, isra haram fureshes bames mekeme hera. This is teaching us that just like when a woman has her menstrual period, one is not allowed to be with her, so too in this case, it compares the two cases and tells us the same way over there was clear that they cannot be together, so too in this case, that one should not be together as well. Verse 22. Shmartem is kol chukesi, you should therefore watch all my statutes, as kol mishpatei, and all my laws. Ve'asisam eisam, you'll do them. Ve'lisakia eschem ha'aretz, and the land will not vomit you out. Asher ani mevi eschem shama, that I'm bringing you there, l'sheves ba, to settle there. Verse 23. Ve'lisechu b'chukis hagoy, and you should not go in the ways of the nations around you. Asher ani mishalech miprechem, that I am sending them away before you. Ki es kol eila, also because they did all these terrible acts, ve'okutz bam, and I have become disgusted by them, with them. Verse 24, and therefore I tell you today, Atem tirshuas ad masam, you are going to take their land, you're going to inherit their possessions. You will take their possessions of their land. And I will give it to you, to take possession of it, a land that flows with milk and honey. I am God, your God, that I segregated you, mina amim, from the rest of the nations. I distinguished you, you are different, you have separate laws, and the very fact that these laws were given to you is because you are different than everybody else. Verse 25, part of this is as well, v'ivdalta mina behema. By being segregated, by being special and distinguished from the other nations of the world, I have therefore also separated and therefore it's distinguished between the animal which is clean, pure, l'tamei, the one that is impure, ben ha'oif, to the bird, l'hatami, which is impure, l'ter, the one that's pure. You should not make yourselves disgusting. Ba'behema, with the animal, ba'oif, with the bird, whatever crawls on the earth. Asher hivdalti lachem l'tamei, that I distinguished and separated and made it something of impurity. Rashi, v'ivdalti ben abehemon latera, ve'ein tzarech leimer, what's the word v'ivdaltim that he distinguished? Ve'ein tzarech leimer, I don't have to say between the two different kinds, bein parah lachamer, between a cow and a donkey, sheirim uvdala v'dikarim, because that's very obvious that they're different. Ella, what's the verse telling us? Bein tahir lacha, something which is allowed, meaning that it's pure, that it's permitted to eat. L'tamei, to something which is impure, that you're not allowed to eat. Ben shenishchat rubei, to one that was completely slaughtered. Al simin, that both of its trachea and esophagus were slaughtered. L'nishchat chatzir, to one of them that only some of it was slaughtered, therefore it's not considered a kosher animal. Kama ben rubei, what's the difference between a majority of the actual windpipe that was cut to how much? Only a half. Maloi Saira is only by a thread. And you say, what's the big deal? It's only a thread. Therefore, God says, no, this is where the difference comes. Because though the laws, you say, what's the little big deal? A little bit here, a little bit there. This is where this distinguishing comes, that God said, this is kosher, this is not, this is pure, this is not. Asher ivdalti lechem l'tamei, lesser, to make it prohibited on you. This is what the words mean, to be impure. Verse 26, V'yisam li kedoshim, and therefore you must be to me holy. Ki kodesh ani, because ki kodesh ani Hashem, because I am holy, I am God. V'avdil eschem min amim, and have distinguished you from all the people of the universe. Li'os li, that you should be for me as a nation. Rashi 26. V'avdil eschem min amim li'os li, if you distinguish yourselves, meaning if you see yourselves as separate, segregated from these type of behaviors, that you eat only the things you're allowed to, you act in a way of purity, then you're mine. If not, then you can join the other enemies of society, as Nebuchadnezzar and his friends. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah used to say, how do we know that a person should not say, Nafshi kotza b'bsar chater, I am disgusted by pig flesh. And therefore I don't eat it. Or he says, oh, I'm not able to wear garments that are mixed with wool and linen. I don't feel comfortable in them. That's not what a person's meant to say. Aval, what he should say is, Yoimar, he should say, Efshi, I'd like to have it. I'm tempted by it. Ma'esa, what should I do? That my Father in heaven has decreed upon me I shouldn't have it. How do I know one is supposed to say that? Talmud Loimar, because it says in the verse, I've distinguished you from the nations li'asli, to be for me. That you should sanctify it for that case, that you yourselves should say, I am segregating myself for the sake of God. A person says, I will explicitly separate myself from doing something wrong. Why? Mekabel of Malchus Shemaim, to accept subservience of God. Technically, I would want to do it, but because God told me, that's why I don't do it. Accepting upon yourself the yoke of heaven, recognize the subservience that God gives us, that is part of the commitment of being holy and sanctifying oneself to God. Verse 27, V'isha, a man or a woman. Now he concludes with the punishment of the divining. A man or woman who is a diviner, who speaks from their armpit or putting a stone in their mouth, or those kind of things. They should be put to death. But Evan Yirgamoisam, they should be stoned. Demeam bum, their blood is their own fault. Kan number bam misov, here it says that what the punishment is, liable of punishment by the Bezdin. Well, the Maila, previously in verse 6, it said Karis, that they will be cut off and that the punishment is in the hands of heaven. And therefore, one has to explain, saying as follows: A demasra, if there are witnesses and warning to these individuals, then biskila, then they'll be stoned, and it's done by the Bezdin. Meizid, below yasra, but if they did it on purpose, they did it, knowingly and without any warning, then their punishment is in kares, being cut off and dying prematurely. Vishikigasam, if they did it inadvertently, chatas, then they have to bring us an offering. So too, all of the times that we find that the Torah says that they are liable of the death penalty, that it also says about them that they will be cut off and die prematurely, meaning if there was witnesses and warning, then they will have the liable of the capital punishment that the Bezdin, the rabbinic court, would enact on them. If there was no witnesses or warning, but they did it knowingly and wantingly, then they would be getting karis, which God would punish them that they die prematurely. If they did it inadvertently, then they would have to bring a sin offering. This concludes the Torah reading of Acharei Mos and Kedoshim.